Tell us a little more about what these tests, what exactly these tests involved.
Well, there were a handful of tests where they basically altered people's profiles to see what kind of response they would get. And there were some as simple as changing the text or removing the text that describes somebody. The photo thing that they did, where they would take someone's profile, they would remove the photo to see what kind of response they would get, how many messages they would get. And what they found by removing the photo, for example, was that users would get 44% more messages in terms of an initial response, that the conversations would actually go deeper, and the contact deals were exchanged faster. But this is all through sort of messing with the profile that someone elected to put out there into the world. I think maybe the most interesting one was the confidence game, not the old-fashioned confidence game where you three-card Monty, but in fact the con game here was where they would tell someone who had a 30% matchability score that they actually were 90%ers, and they found that those people, once they had the confidence that 90% gave them, would engage in more messages and get more active in this dating community.
Right, basically they would manipulate the compatibility score to make it higher or lower, and if it was higher, then users felt more inclined to message those people, and it sort of just goes to show how easily websites can manipulate our emotions and emotional responses.
Yeah, and I think, look, I think the reason this really touches such a nerve is because this is about dating, or maybe it's about sex, but it's about something so personal and intimate in the way that people put themselves out there. The notion that a business would change this data to, they weren't just sort of messing around for fun. They weren't engaged in a scientific study, as Facebook was a few months ago, we now know. But they were actually trying to change users' profiles to get more action on their site and get more business happening there. This is a commercial effort to try to change the way their site is, their business is succeeding in the competitive world of online dating, when they're up against eHarmony, they're up against Match.com, or up against all of the other sites that we're talking about all the time in this business. So I think it's a pretty big deal, and I think that's what makes this particularly pernicious.
It's interesting. Obviously, Facebook has been the target of a huge uproar in the last several weeks for, similarly trying to do experiments to manipulate people's emotions. OkCupid, it doesn't seem getting the same amount of heat, but both companies saying, look, this is in the name of experimentation, in the name of improving the service. Is it okay if that's the end goal?
Well, let me offer two takeaways. Right, the easy one is Mark Zuckerberg's or OkCupid's notion of privacy might not be yours, but it's your data that they're talking about. But I think the bigger issue is for businesses that start to engage in social media and start to construct businesses built on user information. The notion that if you're using a site for free and you don't know what the product, you are the product. Well, when companies are engaging, right, they love that word, engaging with their consumer, they're touching their consumer in new sorts of ways. Look, the consumer might feel very differently about that relationship. And while the company might think it's their data to mess with, the consumer, who really feels like it's their data and they can decide how to put it out there, has a very different relationship with that business and that brand. And OkCupid's co-founder's out there saying he's only heard 2 complaints about this. But the complaints he might hear is people jumping to Match.com, eHarmony, Tinder, Grindr, you name it. Whatever business they were getting, they might not get anymore because they messed with the trust of their customer.